It's good. Thank you. We're all set. All right, we finally got our technology working at the technology conference. So we have our last speaker for you. If you could please settle down. And Bryant Nielsen from CapitalWave will talk to us about media technology training. Okay. So thank you, everyone.
All right, I really want to, if everyone could sit down, because we're running out of time. I actually lost 10 minutes out of my time already, so your cooperation is appreciated. First of all, my name is Brian Nielsen, and I'm the Executive Director of CapitalWave, and CapitalWave is a training firm that specializes in the capital and wealth markets. So most of our clients are investment banks or hedge funds or money management firms. And so what I'm going to share with you today is actually our experience with the use of technology. So a little bit about what we've done. Our genesis, we're 8 years old. Our genesis was in the instructor-led training. It's considered by many to be the gold standard, both at the university academic level, in the corporate level, in pretty much just about everything. The problems that you have with instructor-led training is that you can't scale it easily. You can't manage it well. What do you do if an instructor's sick? What do you do if there's a facility issue? What do you do if people can't be away from their desk? These are all issues that we all have to navigate. Well, our approach was to actually adopt the MOOC learning framework. How many of you are familiar with what MOOCs are? Okay. How many of you have taken a MOOC course? All right, so in 2013, we actually started delivering our training via a MOOC platform. Our very first MOOC platform was fairly rudimentary. We can't use public MOOC platforms simply because we're in the financial sector, and compliance would never, ever allow for that type of open availability. So we actually had to turn around and develop our own MOOC learning framework or platform for it, which we call our digital learning environment. So what we're going to talk about here is two aspects, and they're going to introduce themselves, but I'm going to do it fairly quickly because I don't have a lot of time. The technology is a key differentiator for learning and development. So here we have a couple of tombstones, and really I want to tell you our perspective of it. First of all, corresponding courses. How many of you are old enough to have actually done a correspondence course? That's a frightening thing. People don't even remember that. The second thing, though, is that we had computer-based training. And I really put these dates down here because in correspondent courses really precede 1800, but not really much because there wasn't a real well-rounded mail delivery system. But it really stopped in about 1980. And we had the birth of computer-based training. So from 1981 to about 1995, computer-based training was really the it thing. How many of you took a CBT? Any more? How many of you remember having to get not the 3.5, the 5.5, or even worse, the 9-inch floppies to put in? All right, that's scary. This, though, is really where I differentiate from a lot of people. The beloved e-learning. The basis of training from a scalable standpoint. I believe it died in 2008. And why do I believe it died in 2008? Because that was the year that the first MOOC course was delivered. Now, this is again, I'm a little, I don't know how to put this. I like to excite people with some of my ideas. And one of them is that e-learning is dead. The e-learning that you have, in my opinion, has been dead, and you guys have been just basically jump-starting it with paddles to keep it alive. It's really a dead cat that's died. Basically, my opinion is of current e-learning is that you're throwing money away. This is really the reality. The reality of it is as follows. We are in an environment which is brutal. We have, from a learning and development standpoint, we have to train more people at a faster scale with better outcomes now. And our budgets are being constrained. And our staff is being reduced. So how are you going about doing that? The answer is really through technology. We've seen an example of Alexa giving us reports. Fascinating. I don't know if it would ever exist in the financial sector. It would never get past compliance and the regulatory aspects of people, but nevertheless, it's there. We look at technology sometimes with awe simply because we're not familiar with what its capacity and capabilities are. So Deloitte actually did a study, and this was in 2013. The study basically said how many firms are familiar with alternative, this is the C-level study, alternative methods. And basically what it came down to was that 70% were unfamiliar with anything that was advancing their learning and development teams. 69% of them had no idea what options they could choose going forward, and 7% were actually the only ones that were adopting any type of new technology. Oftentimes when I'm meeting with people from a learning and development, their adoption of technology is surprisingly low. I know that there was the happy sheet. I have to actually get that slide. That was a great slide on the happy sheets. I am frightened for firms who were dependent on happy sheets. Frightened. There is no reason why you should not have very valid analytics that is available to you. You can do that actually through technology. So staffs have new expectations, and these expectations are very, very simple. The first one is I want training to be personal. I want it to have an ongoing value. I want it to be an immediate fulfillment. And part of that is in the, I think it was our second speaker today, he talked about elevator training. I actually know a guy who does all the training for Otis Elevator. He developed a system so that when the reps go out, they actually have videos to actually do it, just-in-time training. I mean, this is really fascinating. And they get all the parts that they want. And he puts sensors on, Otis puts sensors on their elevators so they even know what parts they're supposed to take to fix the elevator. This is the type of things that is mandatory now. Immediate fulfillment. Real-time delivery. Not later, not when I need to schedule something, not when I need to actually have this skill set and I need to wait 45 days because that's when the next course is being taught. It needs to be available now. And it has to be memorable. Now the reason why we do this is we say to ourselves, there has to be a solution, there has to be a way for us to engage our staff and provide them with the skills that they absolutely must have. It's new technology, and specifically MOOCs and simulations. Now, there's a lot of aspects to MOOCs that people are not really familiar with, but I believe that the combination of the two leads to transformative learning environments. So, if you've actually taken a MOOC, you're familiar with some of these names. Coursera being one of the oldest MOOCs that have been out there. edX, which was the original combination between Harvard and MIT, and Coursera is actually from Stanford. You have Udacity, and you have Khan Academy. You have LinkedIn, who bought Lynda. How many of you ever took a Lynda course? How many of you even know the origin of the Lynda environment? Let me give you just a minor detour on this. The lynda.com training course was actually a bunch of guys. They lived in a commune up in Oregon, and they said, you know what, we actually need to learn HTML. We need to learn this thing about this new idea called the internet. And so they started putting the understanding and training themselves. Then they said, you know what, we could maybe make a little money by actually offering these courses. So they did. The people around the communities basically came there and took these courses. And then all of a sudden they woke up one day and they had nuns from the Vatican attending their courses, and they're going like, what is going on? And that was the moment that they realized that they actually had to scale their training. They had to actually make it something different. And so the way that they made it different was they created an online video training product. Khan Academy, its origin was as a gentleman was teaching his niece and nephew mathematics. He would go into his closet and use a very rudimentary Yahoo design function, and he was doing it live. Well, his niece and nephew had different ideas in terms of their availability, and he was up in Boston, and they were down in Texas, and he said, maybe I could record it. Well, he started recording it for his niece and nephew. He recorded 40 or 50 different mathematic courses, and then all of a sudden, he worked for a hedge fund, by the way. He found out that somebody came running into his office and they said, do you know that Bill Gates is talking about you right now? He's going like, why would he be talking about me? It's because Bill Gates' daughters found those videos on YouTube and said, these are great, Dad, you have to see it. Bill Gates turned around and made a $35 million investment, and that's how we got Khan Academy as we see it today. Now, there are 7 ways that MOOCs are changing how work is being done. The first one is that they build their talent pipeline. So these are 3 firms that are actually using MOOCs to train staff before they even hire them. They're offering courses by saying, you can go on, you can learn about what we're going to do, and if you pass it, you might get an interview. Then we have firms like this. They're using it, actually McAfee, it's going to come up later, and the Federal Reserve are using MOOCs to actually train their people. The Federal Reserve is very interesting because when you first started the Federal Reserve, you have 720 hours worth of training you have to do in your first year plus do your job. In your first year. So that's 5 months of training that you have to do on your own time. McAfee is using the same thing to onboard their staff. Then we have like Deloitte and Yahoo, who are using it to actually create self-directed development. Oftentimes, we have staff that need to have the ability to go out and learn something new, or they want to learn something new, and the way it is in learning and development is that we wall off these things and say, you have to have permissions. Well, these firms are using MOOCs because of their ease of use in terms of creating development, self-directed development plans. Then you have the next ones, which are workforce training. These are companies that are saying, I need to actually have my staff improve on their capabilities. And their capabilities are not always available or needed, or courses are not available and needed at the moment that they need to be learned. What do you do if you have an ongoing hiring process and yet you only offer your onboarding courses quarterly? People are having to wait instead of automatically having it available on demand. Then we have the next ones like Bloom.net. What's really interesting about that is they're using it to educate their partners and their customers. You can actually go on and learn about it. So Bloom actually franchises their things out there, and this is how they actually deliver their training to educate their partners and others. Here we have one. We have it for a broad market awareness. So you have Bank of America that is doing that. They actually signed up with a company to deliver how to actually be better at finance, personal finance, something that should be, of course, taught at high school. It's rarely taught at high school. It's rarely taught at universities. And yet, here we find a need for something that is as important as basic personal finance. We also have Johnson & Johnson, Samsung, and GE. They use their MOOCs for collaborative training and development. Now, the unique thing about MOOCs is that they're so easy to run, and they're so easy to modify, simply because you're not having to take things and wrap them all up into a SCORM wrapper and plug them into your LMS. A MOOC is adaptive in the sense that if you find that somebody is needing a course and you find that a particular module or a lesson needs to be expanded, well, you can just go in, update that particular video, and everything still remains live. You don't lose any of the metrics, you don't lose absolutely anything, and you get all those granular aspects of it. Here are a diverse set of companies that are using MOOCs for learning. Now, the cool thing about MOOCs is that they're different from everything else that we've been doing. First of all, they're always on. They're quick and they're easy. They have instantaneous access because you can access them wherever you are, whenever you want, and from wherever you think that you should access them, and from what time. The unique thing about MOOCs is they're also quite collaborative in the sense that they actually go out and allow for networking. Now, an LMS, every course in an LMS is primarily siloed. That's the problem with it. With a MOOC, you can actually have engagement with an instructor. You can have engagement with other people in the course. Courses are run like live training. There is a limited number of participants in this running of the course, and they're the ones who are going to be able to engage with one another. And instructors then can read what these postings are on a 24-hour basis and reply to them, available just like they would be doing in a live course. A lot of my clients are global companies, and they have people all around the world. So how do you develop a course? This is one of the weaknesses of one of the competitors to MOOCs, and that is live webinar trainings. Live webinar trainings have one big problem, and that is that you're restricted to the specific time of delivery. My apologies. So, what we have here is this, is that what makes unique aspect of MOOCs is that they're always accessible, they're highly flexible, they're scalable, and they're reliable. You don't have to worry about venues, you don't have to worry about instructors, you don't have to worry about different instructors teaching the courses differently. That's a problem. If you're running a number of streams on that same course all at the same time, what do you do if instructor A and instructor D are actually teaching different courses and yet it's the same material? You don't have uniform teaching methods when you actually do that, and that is a problem that you deal with. The aspect of it being flexible, how many of your staff are out there trying to find a way or time to actually take a course because they have the needs and demands of being on the desk or whatever they're doing? They have to be there. They don't have time to go out and do these things. Well, with a MOOC, you can actually fragment or create micro-learning paths that will allow people to absorb training in the frequency and speed that they feel comfortable with. This here is an example of ours. I was going to try to show this live and actually walk you through it, but I felt, I wasn't sure of the internet connectivity. But basically, this is what we have. This is the landing page that we create for a company. This is our demo site. And this is how it looks on the inside, where you actually have a video, and they can see what lessons they've completed or still have to complete. MOOCs are also very, very good at assessments. One of the things that you really want to do, and this is where happy sheets have no meaning. With a MOOC, you can actually create a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. You now have a verifiable analytic that you can go back to your stakeholders and say, this is what they learned, and I can show it to you. Versus, here's a sheet, and they were happy with what they did. Now, were they happy that they were away from their desk? Were they happy that they got to see their friends? Were they happy with the content? Don't know. Here, on this, you have analytics based on knowledge. So that leads us to the second part of it, and it's gamification. I don't like to use the word gamification simply because I think that it is incorrectly used in most environments. Gamification is like badging, and I don't mean to disrespect any firms or ideas where there's implementations of it, but gamification is just gaming the process. Really what I like is the word simulation. And the reason why I like simulations is because they provide much, much more. They provide an expected aspects of execution. And they're learning actually new processes and strategies. They're building on their team building aspects. In the financial sector, what is so frightening is how many university students are graduating with like master degrees in finance who have no idea anything about the financial sector. Or even worse, they have no idea how to work as a team collaboratively. So that's one of the aspects that our simulations, we have 6 simulation platforms. One that covers capital markets, in the sense that it's like a prop trader. We have a Forex trader platform. We have a fixed income trader platform. We have one that does derivatives, options. We have 2 that are actually deal with live training. And the aspect of that is I mean, live data, I don't like to use the live data ones simply because there's no learning objective in there. Whatever the simulation is, if you're using live data, is limited to whatever the market is doing at that moment. We're getting millennials who are graduating from school who have no idea what a recession is or what a bear market is. And if you can't give them that experience in different sectors, you are not teaching them anything. And the other problem is, especially in the financial sector, is all of these students are graduating thinking that the equity markets are the biggest and most important markets in the world because that's the market that actually gets covered the most. It's not. The largest market in the world is the Forex market, and the second largest market in the world is the fixed income market. And then you get into derivatives, and they all massively exceed what's happening. So our objective with using simulations is to get them familiar with how markets work. That's the first objective. Then the second objective is that we actually want them to learn through their actions. We want them to make mistakes. It's easy to make a mistake and it's cheap to have a mistake made in a simulation. It becomes very, very expensive the moment that you put real money or real lives in touch with people who are still learning. The important here is it also gives them immediate feedback. All of a sudden they're getting analytics they've never ever seen before. They get to understand what alpha is and what beta is and what different things like Sharpe ratio, Traynor ratio, information ratio. What are these things and what do they mean? All of a sudden they get to learn through simulations what the value is of these things. They can also now do something that is very important, and that is they can enjoy the learning. They're not panicked. It also allows for moderators to develop conversations in terms of saying to a particular delegate because the irony is this, is in the academics, it's their students. The moment that some sectors, they call them participants. In the financial sector, we refer to the staff member as a delegate. All of a sudden, they get to see and understand exactly what's going on. So the components of a simulation, it has to be, first of all, realistic. It has to have a sense of competition. That's an important aspect for my sector, is how are you going about creating something that is going to be competitive? The moment that they get hired, they're in a competitive environment. They need to understand what the pros and cons are of that. They need to have a combination of learning and dialogue. Well, the way you do that is they're learning. First of all, you lecture them on what they're supposed to learn. They can then turn around and immediately apply it in a simulation and then get immediate feedback. It's a very fast cycle. It's also targeted and not blanketed. Again, I can take an individual and say, I'm going to teach you what it was like to trade on Black Monday. They can't do that in real life unless they lived it. I'm going to teach you what it was like to manage a portfolio when the Asian financial crisis happened. Or I'm going to teach you what it was like to trade when we had a flash crash, where Accenture went from $45 down to 2 cents back to $45 in the matter of about 18 minutes. How are you going to teach unless they're there or you have the ability to do so? It also allows them to network because now they're working collaboratively. So what we have here is this, is we have a lot of different tools. You will have a lot of different tools that are available to you. If you'll notice, only one of these light bulbs is an incandescent light bulb. The rest of them are new technology. And the reason why is you need to illuminate your learning with technology. So here's an important thing of why it's important for you to think about these two aspects of technology in the use of your learning and development solutions. 35% of current staff are millennials. By 2020, that number will be 65%. That doesn't mean you don't address generational learning patterns. I mean, what I learn and how I learn is entirely different how my sons, who are both millennials, 25 and 29, they learned an entirely different mechanism. They also learned by spending, by the way, this is a little fact, Millennials have spent more time playing games than they've actually spent in class for their entire life. Almost a 2-to-1 ratio. They love games. Why you're not using simulations is beyond me. You should absolutely be doing it. They are also watching more videos than ever. YouTube uploads, I think it is the number is the equivalent of 30 years, or I don't know, some astronomical number per day of video. There's just no way you can do it. But they're consuming it in ways that you've never had an opportunity before. Teaching them in the old-fashioned way or giving them the very old, boring e-learning is going to be death. So what are the nuts and bolts of transformative learning? You have to have, of course, clear learning objectives. You have to have defined expectations, content delivery tools. These are all the same things that we already do now. But we're going to now introduce activities and gamification. We have to have interaction. And the interaction, one of the things that I describe a MOOC deliverable, I don't refer to it as a MOOC, I refer to it as a MOOC learning framework. And that is that if you do it right, it's what I call in-person training. It's as if the instructor is right in front of them, showing them what they need to learn. And the unique thing about video that you do not get in a live instructor-led training is the ability to go back. So the biggest problem is that we overload all of our delegates with way too much information. I don't know how many of you have ever ran a 3 or a 4-week course, very, very long, lots and lots of information. These are summer programs that all the financial sector delivers each and every year, and it just overwhelms them. The value of a MOOC is they can actually go back. If they became momentarily distracted, they're going like, wait, what was that? You can't tell an instructor, wait, repeat that for me. But with a video, you can actually do that. You can also go back and do something else, and that is you can reflect upon your learning and go back and confirm it. That is something you cannot do in instructor-led training. You need to have collaboration. You need to have motivation and engagement. There has to be competition in your e-learning. There just has to be. Of course, you need to provide support, and the most important aspect is analytics and reporting. Now, the guy that was just before me, he actually did something that I was introduced to about 4 or 5 years ago, and that is the qualitative aspect of your questions. What is your confidence level? I think that's a very, very clever way to actually judge a person's learning capabilities, because if they're guessing, they're going like, well, I think it's right, and they'll actually answer it and then give a qualitative aspect to it. Very, very clever. I've never adapted that into my learning platform, but I think that that's one thing that I should. So, here we have just enough time for 5 minutes of discussion. Anyone have any questions? Yes?
What software do you use to build them?
Well, the beautiful thing about a MOOC is that you're not using authoring tools. You're actually using you're creating videos. So you develop, the way we do it is this, is we first of all identify what we want to have the learning objectives to be. We develop an outline. Once we've developed the outline, we develop all the content. Once we've developed the content, then we bring in the subject matter expert or the instructor who's going to actually then deliver it. We shoot everything in a studio, green screen, and then do a lot of post-production so that it has a fairly high level. Now, it was Harvard who actually said when they actually released how much it costs for them to develop a single course. For them, it's astronomical. It's a little over $200,000 for every course they develop, for Coursera or edX, actually in their particular case. Way out of line. Generally, what I find is that to develop a course for a MOOC, you have to spend, it's about $45,000 to develop it. And that includes your instructional designer, that includes creating all of the content, that includes actually bringing in the subject matter expert, having the studio, having videographer, video post-production. But the moment that you have that, where it becomes then valuable to you is now when you need to update that particular course, you don't have to update the whole course. You go in and refilm that one little lesson, that video, and now your course is completely updated. Or even better, you realize that there's a lot of questions about one particular topic and I need to expand upon that. Well, you just go in there and you expand it because you're not wrapping this all up. And it can be delivered live, meaning people are in the course, running the course, they're not quite to that video and you can go in and replace it. The MOOC platform, in my opinion, should replace what LMSs are doing. LMSs are great technology, but they're bound by their own use. And a MOOC is now a brand new free environment. I mean, it's crazy easy. Any other questions? Yes.
So, in the field that the research on your way is, I mean, isn't this a highly regulated field? So if I go on the MOOC and I go through the training, how does that satisfy, you know, what internal auditors, regulators, and all others who are looking to see that I actually have proficiency around certain financial topics?
Because you have an assessment. You have all the assessments. Like the way that we run our assessments, first of all, our video lengths, we actually adopt the TED Talk length. So no videos longer than 18 minutes, generally shorter. If you look at like lynda.com or now it's LinkedIn, they use 6-minute increments. I think 6 minutes is way, way too short to learn actually a concept. You actually have to spend some time with it, but 18 minutes is reasonable. So none of our videos are more than 18 minutes. And if we're delivering like the equivalent, like we just created a course for a client on the global impact of blockchain regulation. And it's equivalent to a 2-day course. It took us 4 days to actually film it, full days to film it, just to get down to the right amount. But every video now has a question attached to it. At the end of every module, so everything is modularized, there's an assessment, so they're learning the assessment there. So they have a pre-assessment, they have video assessments, they have module assessments, and then they have a post-assessment. You have more assessments now than you've ever had before. And again, the value to you is now you go back to your stakeholders and say, I can actually give you real proof of what happened. And the best example I'm going to do, and maybe I'll finish with this, is our first client, when we first did this, they're a money management firm, and they wanted to train 500 of their masters of the universe. These are people who've been in the financial planning business for at least 5 years, most of them 10 years. And so we gave them a pre-assessment under the understanding that the firm was going like, we don't know if we need this training. So we said, fine. We've created an assessment, 30 questions, have all 500 take it. So they all did. So we went back in with the results. And so my first question to them was, what's pass? What's passing? They first said, oh, these guys are all smart. These are the brightest people in the world. They work for us. They have years of experience. They said 90%. I go, no one passed with 90%. They go, okay. It has to be 80%. We'll have probably 65, 70%. I go, you have 2 people out of 500 that got an 80 on this. They go, well, okay, well, let's try it at 70. I go, it's now 12 out of 500. 12 people out of 500 who are in financial planning and advisory roles who failed this test. At the end of our course, which was a 12-week course, they were spending 3 hours every week for that. All but 2 got above 80%. Same exact test, all we did is randomize the questions. So it was something that they just didn't know. And that's really what the problem is. Oftentimes, you don't know unless you provide an assessment. If you don't use any technology going forward, the thing that I would say more than anything else is to use assessments. Use them vigorously. Use them robustly, because it will make your job easier, because now you can go back to your stakeholders and say, I can actually show you what the difference is. And it doesn't matter whether they were happy about it or not, because the firm's objectives are that they need to know it. Now, one of the drawbacks that people have said about MOOCs, public MOOCs, is there's a low completion rate. Yes, that's true. Public MOOCs cost you 0. You can express an interest, and there's no requirement for you to show up. Tell that to a person or to a boss whose staff is saying, like, I don't really want to do that. It's like, no, you have to do that. The completion rate of a MOOC course in a corporate environment is pretty close to 100%. And for those who don't do it, I've seen them just being released. I mean, it's just straightforward. You're out of here. You can't do it. That's it.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thanks, Brian.